Today we're going to be looking at something I consider a law of averages style of deck. It's not a typical deck style, and in fact this isn't really a typical play style, certainly not for PvE, but we're going to rely on some of the mechanics of building decks, the mechanics of combat, and the mechanics of the skills themselves to come together in a way that is going to give us a very powerful deck that actually is fairly easy to play. It doesn't require a lot of physical dexterity at the keyboard and mouse, not a lot of very precise timing and things like that. But this is a game where putting in extra effort is rewarded. So you'd think that kind of be a sacrifice, kind of be a reduction in our power, but actually the effort we're putting in is kind of on the back end. We're designing this deck in a way that takes advantage of all these systems, and it's kind of the understanding of these systems and the testing and the working out of these systems. That's the effort we're putting in to kind of get this power out. And so we'll start by bringing up the deck builder, and we'll kind of see how that's going to happen. So I've given my deck a title here, Riposte Averages. Again, a law of averages style build, and Riposte is a skill in the Blades tree that this deck is sort of centered around. And it's not one that gets a lot of use, so part of the fun for me of this deck is actually getting Riposte to get some use, and actually having it be a very high damage skill. This is a very situationally powerful skill. The way it functions is when a mob attacks you, if you're able to parry that attack, and then within a certain time frame, you're able to use your riposte, that riposte is very powerful. Normally, it's actually fairly mediocre. It doesn't do a lot of damage. But if it comes within that window after a parry, it does do a lot of damage. And that might seem like a delicate bit of timing, but that's where a law of averages is going to come in, and that's where the chaotic feedback style of this build is going to come in. So let's actually start there. We're going to take chaotic feedback, we're going to put a glyph of that on our deck. We're going to have it locked so we can very easily do a single stack, because our build relies very heavily on this skill. And that way apply it very quickly in situations where we need it right away. In situations where we have time to charge it up a little bit, it'll be locked, we could sit there and charge it and get even more power out of it. And similarly, we're going to put Locked Berserker on. This is going to give us a lot of power because we're tactic spec. It has a large melee and ranged critical damage bonus, and on top of giving a lot of strength and attack speed and move speed. And of course it has downsides as well, but with it being locked, we'll be able to very quickly put it on, make sure it's always on, always working for us. Even in the heat of battle, we can very easily recast it. But of course, being locked, we can also charge it up when we have a chance and get the most power out. Now, chaotic feedback, it's going to give us that very high draw speed, let's draw cards very quickly. And it's also going to give us a very generous cast time multiplier, let us use those skills very quickly, execute them very quickly. But one of the downsides to that is you can't heal off life magic very effectively, unless you use a different strategy that we won't be talking about today. But also, it has a focus damage rate. So what that's going to do is every time I use focus, I'm going to take health damage. When this is stacked up, it's about a 1.4 rate for me. That rate gets lowered by spec, and I am chaos spec'd. But if I use 100 points of focus, I'm going to take 140 points of damage about. So to help mitigate that, we're actually going to pull a skill over from our Bard tree. We're going to pull Melody of Mending over, be able to cast that and mitigate some of that damage that's coming in. And while we're in the Bard tree, we're actually going to do something that'll kind of bolster our damage. When we have a chance running between mobs, if we have the time to cast Savage Sonata, we'll throw that on as well, get ourselves some extra power there. We're also going to use our number 2 slot, our locked slot there for Fireflies. I always want to be able to cast this, so I'll just come in, I'll throw a single stack onto a mob, and that'll give us a melee and ranged critical hit damage reduction modifier on the mob that lets our crits land for really big numbers, get really nasty crits with the skill. It's a fantastic skill for any physical damage build. Now we have 2 options for our number 6 slot. We can use Body Slam to help mitigate damage. We can Body Slam mobs that are maybe getting a bit too aggressive for us, give us a second to heal. We can also just use it as an offensive skill. When I was polearms, this used to be my finishing skill. If you fire it off very quickly, because it does execute very quickly, and chaotic feedback makes that even faster, you can actually get a bunch of slams in really quickly. You won't be stunning them because you'll be stacking your CC resist on the mob, but you will just get a lot of rolls at a crit, and when those crits come through, they can actually hit for big damage if you have a lot of strength behind them. So this used to be my finishing move. We're going to put it there, and because we actually have a better finishing move now, we won't be using it for that. We'll be using coup de grace as our current finishing move in this build. Does huge damage, uses even more focus, 47 focus for a single stack, with no heat as opposed to 29 for body slam. And when you start stacking heat on this thing, it uses a lot of focus. That's actually why I have it locked relatively low compared to my other Blade's damage glyphs. It's just because the focus cost gets so intense, I wouldn't have the focus to spam it, and I wouldn't have the health to overcome the damage it does through that focus transfer ratio with chaotic feedback. So I've actually locked it at a lower level, just so I can still use it and still spam it when the mob gets to 20% health and try to get those really big hits. So that's going to be our combo here. And another option would be adding, say, Rend to this. It's almost sacrilegious to use a Blade build that doesn't use Rend, such a powerful tool. But we're relying on this very rapid attack rate. We are using all our masterworks on our weapons to support other glyphs, so we actually don't get a whole lot out of Rend. And the time it takes to stack it, even the time it takes to put in a single stack, we're oftentimes better off going with a different attack skill. So we're using the body slam setup. The other option here is Rend. Coup de grace, very nice. This is locked to a mouse button, so I can very easily in battle, towards the end of battle, hit it really quickly. Another slot locked to my mouse button is actually my number 9 slot. And this is going to be our primary healing slot. Again, if you go to the chaotic feedback skill, over time, the longer you have it on, the worse your life attunement gets. It just tanks your life attunement. So we have to compensate for that somehow. And the way we're doing that is actually just pure brute force. We're just chugging a whole bunch of potions. And this build is actually, as we're about to see, it's very powerful. It can earn a lot of gold, a lot of loot, but a lot of what it earns, it spends right back on potions. So it looks a lot more profitable than it actually is. It does still, it is still viable. You do still get more out of it than you have to put into it. But it's not quite as good as it looks. It's a lot of fun to see all the loot roll by, but a lot of it goes right back out the door on potions. We're actually going to put quite a few in. So I've put restoration and health imbued on this bar. I'm going to put all 5 imbued in. This is actually going to give me not just health that I'll need, because I have to heal not only the damage coming in from mobs, but also the damage I'm doing to myself from chaotic feedback. But it's also going to give me focus, and we're going to be spamming glyphs so fast that we're going to use a lot of focus. So I really like the restoration imbued, because it gives me both at the same time. But it won't be enough to keep on top of the heals we need. We'll actually have to throw in some imbued health as well, and we'll throw a couple in there. This number 9 slot is actually a very big balance point for this deck. So our number 8 slot is tied to mouse wheel up. Our number 0 is tied to mouse wheel down. That's where we're going to be doing a lot of our damage. And when I said it's kind of easy to play, it's just moving the mouse wheel up and down is most of our damage. And then when we need to heal, we hit the side button and heal. But these 8 and 0 slots aren't going to be draw any glyph. Potions won't draw there because we don't want to take potions kind of willy-nilly when we don't need them, put them all on cooldown, end up spending extra gold that we don't need to spend by burning those potions. So the only place they're going to be drawing is this number 9 slot. And this number 9 slot, because of that, if it's occupied by a potion, will be causing us to dead draw. We'll have a potion in the number 9 slot, we'll draw another potion from the deck, we'll have to pause and then discard that, and that's going to slow down our draws to our other slots. So we want to have as few potions here as we can and still actually be viable, still be doing the damage we need to and still be getting the heals we need to without dying. It's ultimately the goal. So this is a very big balance point for this deck. I threw in some Rends there just to demonstrate that, to give an example of how those will be tied up, but really what we're wanting in there is Riposte. This is kind of the heart of this build. This is where the magic happens. And we're actually going to have all 5 cards of Riposte in there. And I referred to it as a law of averages build. Riposte is powerful when you are attacking directly after a parry. That means we have to do a lot of parries. We're going to come back to tactics, and again, we're going to rely on our tactics spec. 6 cards of parry, because we have that spec, we have that extra card, and because we have that spec, we get the specialization bonus to parry, which is actually that the short duration high parry modifier bonus is extended. That short window is a little bit longer. It's 5.2 seconds for us instead of 2 seconds if we didn't have spec. And the higher your spec level, the longer that window is. But with it at 5.2 seconds and us having 6 cards, that means we can fire a card on average every 5 seconds. It's a 30-second cooldown skill. If we can fire a card on average every 5 seconds, and that high parry modifier short duration bonus is 5.2 seconds, that means in theory we can always be in that modifier. We can always have that plus 72 parry with us, which is fantastic. To actually time that perfectly would be very difficult though. So we're going to put all these cards in here and we're going to rely on them just over time getting spread out. And they're going to draw to both slots. They're going to eventually get spread out, and we're just going to spend a large portion of our time in that high parry modifier. And it's not going to require micromanagement of buffs or some very precise timing to make sure we're always in that parry window. It's just going to roll through and naturally occur at not 100% rate, but at a very high rate. We also have offhand attack in this tactics tree, and being tactics spec, we do get a 6th card for it. And the tactics spec adds a short duration bonus to parry. So, every time we attack, we're getting another parry bonus here. It's 10 seconds this time. This is a 5-second cooldown glyph, and we have 6 of them in our deck. Well, we have 0 in our deck now. Let's add 6 to our deck, because it's so powerful, and it's going to always, whenever we're in combat, you keep us with that 16.2 parry modifier, because it's a 10-second duration buff, and we can fire this about once a second if we get lucky on the rolls. It's going to always have us in that parry window. And we've actually got offhand defense here to boost that. Now, 16.2 and then another 72 is actually going to move us into the soft cap, well into the soft cap for parry. Parry soft cap's at plus 75. Plus we have other parry. We have parry on our weapons. We have intrinsic parry as well. So we are always going to be operating within that soft cap, which means we're pretty dang close to as much parry as you can practically have, and we're having that most of the time. And that's really kind of the crux of this build. And that's how it works. You can do a similar thing, incidentally, instead of parry or riposte, you can do a similar thing with dodge and opportunity strike. Kind of, sort of. We might look at that one day. But that's a lot of the fun of this build, and that's where a lot of the power comes from. That's why it's called riposte averages, is because we're relying on those laws of averages to spread those glyphs out, to keep us most of the time in that high parry window, and a lot of the time we're going to be getting a riposte in right after we've done a parry, because we're doing a lot of parries. We're going to be in that opportunity window very often. But offhand attack and riposte aren't quite enough. We do still need other attacks. Normally you would keep your deck very lean. You would have as few glyphs as possible in it, so that you're always drawing the correct glyphs you want when you want them. You're not locking up your deck. You're not drawing a bunch of dead draws to slots that are already occupied. But because we have this chaotic feedback, because we're able to draw very quickly and we're able to cast very quickly, we actually get the luxury of being able to throw in more cards. In fact, beyond being a luxury, it's actually a requirement. Otherwise, we'll burn out the deck. All our stuff will be on cooldown, and we won't have anything to fire with. So, we're going to go over here to Blades, and we're actually going to throw in some Thrust as well, because it's a very powerful card. We're going to get a lot of our Thrusts in. And we're going to throw in some Double Slash as well. Even it out. We won't fill that out. We'll just throw a few in to keep it working. The Double Slash especially, but even Thrust is another balance point. You can add or remove glyphs depending on what you're fighting, what you need to do. If I added a lot more potions in here, I might need more potions just so that they're not always on cooldown if I'm having to do a ton of healing. But it might mean that I'm dead drawing a lot of potions. So what I might actually do is add more Double Slash in just so that I get, on average, the same balance of attack glyphs and healing glyphs. You know, it's the same split, say 40-60 or whatever it happens to be, 30-70. But I still have the extra potion cards in to overcome their cooldown. That's the sort of strategy this affords, and again, that's where we're putting our work in. We want to put in work because basically any time you have a chance to put extra effort in, you have a chance to get extra power out. And so while this is a simple deck to play, once we're actually playing it, we need to be able to get power out of it, which means we're going to have to put some effort in. Finding out those balance points is one of those points of effort. And this is going to be the glyph side of our deck. That's pretty much it. What we are missing is the weapon side and the combat side. So we have up here a Quiver of Jealousy. That's going to give us draw speed. That's very important for our build. And that's why we've chosen it for our back slot. The rest of this gear is sort of our normal adventuring gear. And we also still have our weapon slots open. We're going to have to add some deck-specific gear there as well. And weapon selection is always going to be very important for what you're trying to do, because there's a lot of opportunity to customize weapons. And that's coming usually through the masterwork and enchant side, and even through the materials you use. So in this case, we have weapons that have double slash, riposte, and thrust power on them, as well as some weapon critical damage. Because we're in this daggers build, we're very crit focused and we're critting a lot. We've used the crit damage masterwork. So 3 masterworks for three glyph power masterworks, and all of them ones we're using. So no wasted space with a rend masterwork when we're not using rend, or something of that nature. Very similar weapon on this side. Those are the weapons we're going to use, and now we're all set. Now we get to use current equipment and tie that gear to our deck, and we get to go see it in practice. This is the fun part. And when I say this is the fun part, it really is. We've done the work, and now we get to have the fun. All the preparation on this is on the backside. The actual playing isn't that difficult. So we're going to equip it as an alt. We're actually in our buff deck right now, but we don't have the gear for our buff deck. We have the gear we just tied. So what I'll actually do is I'll switch to the deck we'll be using, and switch back to my buff deck, and you'll see one of the joys of a gear tie is I actually have a staff on this buff deck, and that gives me no fizzle. You have a minus 30% magic fizzle chance from the staff, and you have a minus 10% from having an open offhand, for a total of minus 40% magic fizzle chance. Very handy for buff decks if you're in, like I am, a build with relatively high fizzle, or you're using skills that have high fizzle modifiers. Chaotic Feedback actually gets plus 100% fizzle chance from equipment. So it'd be kind of difficult to run without that staff. Alright, get our Berserker stance up. We're also going to add some Shield of Crystal, give ourselves a little bit of extra health, and a little bit of extra Earth Attunement that's going to add strength. And if we're going to fire off Inner Strength, that's going to give us some strength as well. If I'm going to be running around, I want to kind of take it easy, I'll actually pull an Inner Strength over and put it in the number 8 slot, and occasionally just roll a single card of Inner Strength through. Slows me down a little bit in theory on damage, but it makes such a nice, easy, relaxed playstyle. I just get to sit in one deck. It's actually quite fun, and it's something I do a decent amount. So we've hit our Melody of Mending there. As we come up, we're also going to hit our Savage Sonata if we have time between mobs. A little extra power, no reason not to hit it. We're going to run in, apply our Fireflies right here, and we're going to go to town. You'll see these dark red numbers on the bottom. That's incoming damage and parries and dodges. So you'll see parries flying off pretty frequently. And a lot of times after a parry, you'll see a large crit. That's our riposte hitting. So we've done a parry there. We do a 1300. If we see another parry pop up, we'll be on the lookout for big numbers. You see our crits now, 500, 1200. Not bad. We did a parry there, but we didn't hit a riposte. Ah, there it is. 24, 77, 31. Good numbers. We're down below 20%, so we'll do a little coup de grace and finish the mob off. But you see the number of parries flying off. And you do have to be lucky. You do have to hit it in there, but actually, it's not as much luck as it seems like. It's relying on that law of averages, the fact we're so often in that large parry modifier, and so often we are parrying. This is a very high attack rate mob, these Lupine Destroyers. It'll give us lots of opportunity to sneak in those parries. Let's go over here, let's do another mob. In fact, let's do a couple of mobs. Let's grab a Polar Bear and grab one of these Ice Elementals together. This is going to be a slower mob, a slower rate of attack mob in the Polar Bear, and a much slower rate of attack mob in the Ice Elemental. But by stacking them up, we're still having a lot of incoming attacks, because we're getting attacks from both of these guys. We've tabbed between them, you notice, and we've applied Fireflies to both of them. We're keeping that Fireflies on. We're also going to apply some poison here. Corpion Poison, fantastic for this build. A very high rate of attack. That means every time we attack, we're getting bonus 22 to 27 poison damage for every attack. Normally on a Destroyer, you might use something like Festering Death, but with this super high rate of attack, we actually get a little bit more out of that Corpion Poison. So we're fighting away. You notice our health is actually getting kind of low. We're rolling through. We're actually burning out. Maybe the balance point for this many mobs isn't so great on those potions. Maybe we should have put more in. Luckily, we have a backup potion down there, and we have this body slam. We can put that into a polar bear like that, mitigate our damage, give us a little more time. We can pull back, wait for a draw. Ah, but we didn't quite get it. So now that tells us something. That balance point in that slot was great for a Lupine Destroyer. We just whipped through him, but we got a little bit cocky and we pulled two mobs at once. And we actually didn't have enough healing to get through. We burned through our reserve heal. We tried to pull it on our body slam. It didn't work. It wasn't enough. We met the same fate as these many adventurers here, and we went to the grave. But we'll res up, and now we know. Now we could say, all right, I need a little bit more healing if I'm going to fight that many mobs. Maybe I should do smaller pulls, or maybe I should just pop up my deck right here and retreat to safety. Probably not a bad idea. And come in here and pull in some more healing because we were on cooldowns for these timers. So the tricky part is actually finding them in the list. There we go. So we have 5 restorations already. We're maxed out there. Let's maybe pull in some more health potions. In fact, let's just go full out. Let's see if just maxing out and using 5 health potions in there is going to give us the healing we need. We'll have to rebuff now, of course, having died. Most of our potions have stayed on. One that hasn't stayed on is our Wolf Speed, so we'll reapply that. And we'll also apply a haste potion going in this time. Now, haste potions are very useful. They boost your attack speed. You get a lot of damage from your auto attack generally. In this build, we're doing so many glyph attacks. We don't have time to get as many auto attacks in as most builds do. So auto attack speed and base the bladed combat skill, the base combat skill, is actually not as important for us as it is for a lot of builds. But it does still add damage, and it is still useful to get something like a haste potion on. We'll take our Wolf Speed, we'll take our haste potion. We'll take a Corpion potion when we get a little bit closer. But you also notice how quickly we chug those down. Like that imbued potion right there to get our health up. Super quick. And that's that cast type multiplier working for us. That's a lot of what this build relies on. So let's get a Melody of Mending on. Let's get a Stagnation as we go over there. We're going to have to be careful. We want to see if we can get between these guys. You know what? I don't think we're going to be able to. Let's try to go around. And get back over to those mobs we were fighting. And see if with this this new balance in there, this new extra healing capability that we've done just by dragging in some potions, if we can actually handle both these mobs together. They've been wailing on each other, so we'll have a little easier time of it. In fact, we're gonna have a lot easier time of it. They're doing a number on each other. Let's see if we can take this polar bear down real quick. Let's go find another friend for that ice elemental. Grab this one right here. And we'll put Fireflies on him as well. Get our Corpion poison going. And now we're all set. So we're still attacking very rapidly. When that potion comes up and we have room in our health, if we're missing enough health that we're not going to be wasting any portion of that potion, we're going to go ahead and take it. You notice occasionally we're slowing down a little bit on the attacks, though. That's because we're dead drawing those potions. We still have a lot of potions in there that are on cooldown. As we go through and use more potions, that'll go away, but also we'll start running out of heals, so we'll have to be a little bit careful. Maybe if we get a little bit nervous, though, little body slam, cut back on the damage coming in. Now, that also means it's not attacking. We're cutting back on our damage into the mob. We're not getting those big ripostes in when we have that mob body slammed. But that's okay. If it keeps us alive, it's worth doing. This mob's now within coup de grace range. We can maybe throw those in, but maybe we're a little bit worried about not enough health, not enough focus. We'll wait till we chug a couple of health potions. Nice full health. Plenty of room to just spam this coup de grace without killing ourselves with it. And we can finish off the mob. So getting that little balance point in there, tweaking that with those potions, it worked great for us. It gave us the healing power we needed to go through and do both of those together. So, obviously there's a lot more you can do with this. There's a lot more tweaks, there's a lot more refining, there's a lot more work you can put in to get extra power out. And again, that's kind of the thing we're taking advantage of, is that it's a game where The more work you put into your build, the more power you'll get out. You'll get rewarded for it for every extra bit of effort. Um, but those are definitely the basics of it. And you see, in principle, it does work. It is effective. But we do get some very big numbers in there coming off those parries, coming off those ripostes that we do after the parry. And it's a very fun playstyle. I very much enjoy it. It's nice to look at all this loot coming in, even if half of it goes right back into maintaining the build, getting more potions, replacing daggers that wear out so fast when you attack so much. All the potions you burn through. But it's a good one. Ooh, what isn't good is taking that damage. Chaotic feedback. This cold is giving us focus damage. Let's dismiss chaotic feedback, so it doesn't hit us for 222 damage there. Now we'll be able to skin our polar bear, take our spoils of this very fun deck to play. I hope you've enjoyed it.